Hey, we're talking about some new territory on the channel for once. We're talking about RWBY, of all things. A sort of precursor to the modern form of indie animation, very online. Let's talk about it a bit. Because it looks like, despite the closure of Roosterteeth last year, their 3D animation, RWBY, is actually making a comeback. If you could even call it an anime, anyway. It's very American, so I'm not sure if that really counts. But it certainly wants to be, if nothing else. And now it's coming to Hulu. And that's actually some pretty big news. So what's exactly going on here? How did we get here? It's very much new territory for me to cover, so let me explain. See, RWBY is a show with an incredibly interesting history. The 3D animated web series, spelled out as RWBY, but pronounced as RWBY, was an indie animated powerhouse from the mid-2010s. Though it started out with a small team, a low budget, and a somewhat crude production quality, RWBY eventually evolved into a seriously popular franchise with a large team behind it. A real success story of where indie online web series could go. And there's some serious progression you can perceive, because I mean, it started out like this. To this. To this. In just a matter of a few years. RWBY saw a steady uptick in overall production quality each time it released a new batch of episodes, and fans were invested in seeing the production quality of the series grow and evolve alongside the characters, which makes sense. I can see the sort of meta-narrative of the series as a sort of indie underdog, making it to the big leagues being as appealing as the actual show itself, if not more appealing. But maybe that's my YouTuber brain, I'm not entirely sure. With a new season referred to as a volume, released annually pre-pandemic, and a couple more seasons sprinkled in after that, RWBY pushed the boundaries of what could be done by a production team on its scale. The team behind the show, lovingly dubbed RWBY, was dedicated to improving its quality with each new batch of episodes. And the show was known for its well-choreographed fight scenes, especially during its early years, thanks to the hands-on animation style of its showrunner. Because to make something on a scale like this with a low budget, everyone on the team has to be doing a lot of heavy lifting. Now, RWBY started out as the brainchild of Monty Oum, an animator hired at Roosterteeth to create flashy 3D CGI fights for the company's then flagship machinima show, Red vs. Blue. That's my particular childhood. I'm only recently getting into RWBY stuff. Now, Roosterteeth alone is its own can of worms and so much history and childhood there, but skimming a little bit, the company was mired by controversy and was eventually shut down in May 2024. But actually, RWBY's story is a lot more complex than that. Because you see, RWBY's first 3 seasons were animated in a 3D software called Poser, with Monty taking the lead. He personally animated a significant portion of the first 2 seasons, and the guy clearly had a lot of passion and a story he wanted to tell. Or at least flashy fight scenes that he wanted to connect together with plot somehow. But tragically, Monty Oum died just 2 years after the series debuted of anaphylaxia at 33 during what should have been a routine surgery. Even still, the team carried on his work without him. The following seasons are filled with grief, the impassioned production team pouring their real-world feelings into the show. And with Monty gone, things changed and the show was taken over by new showrunner Kerry Shawcross and head writer Miles Luna. These two had worked with Monty since the early days of the show's production, and now with the show coming back, at least Kerry is still involved as the director a whole decade later. After Monty's death, 5 more volumes of the show were produced under Kerry's leadership. Each of these were done in-house at Roosterteeth Animation and were produced using Maya, which makes sense. Maya is very much the standard software in the animation industry compared to Blender, all the more making those connections of indie production working with the big leagues. You know, anyone could burst into the industry. Without Monty, it definitely made sense to make the switch, especially if they wanted to size up their staff, and it paid off considering how pretty the animators were able to make the show look in later seasons. These last 5 volumes weren't without their set of problems, however, as the show had some budgeting concerns that popped up, particularly because their parent company Roosterteeth was at this point sold to Fullscreen. We're getting into it a bit, because then Fullscreen was bought by Warner Brothers. And the changing management meant changing expectations for Roosterteeth Animation, alongside other projects to manage such as Genlock and Netflix's Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy. And these distractions had practical effects on on RWBY as a production. Not to mention shakeups like the shifting needs of production during 2020, where changes needed to happen mid-season in order for the team to keep working. But the show must go on, and RWBY indeed kept going. And while not all parts of the production improved every season, there is a general increase in the animation quality, at least as the show goes on. But your mileage may vary with the writing. After Roosterteeth wrapped up their 9th season of the show, and after it got 2 3D crossover movies with DC, which I'm told weren't terribly great, the show quietly went into a state of limbo. It seemed that internally, there may not have been enough money going around in the whole of Roosterteeth to fund a 10th volume. And then things seemingly got worse for RWBY's future when Warner Brothers pulled the plug on the entirety of Roosterteeth. For a while, it seemed like RWBY was going down with the ship. That is, until RWBY was sold to its current owner, Viz Media. God, don't you just love business and corporate takeovers? Hello! Yes, you've made it to the halfway mark of this video, so come subscribe if you haven't already. We might cover more RWBY stuff now that this has opened the floodgates. We'll see. We'll see how this video does. Anyway, back to the second half of it. Regardless of what you think about the show's quality, it pulled some insane numbers in. RWBY as a show was nothing if not massive for an indie project. The entire series generated a cumulative 3 billion views. And Warner Brothers, who acquired the show when they purchased Roosterteeth's parent company, claimed the show generated roughly 7 million views per episode, which is nothing to scoff at. It's not Amazing Digital Circus's numbers per episode from these days, but it's still pretty good. RWBY really seems to be, in many ways, the little American anime that could. If you could even count it as an anime. That is a passionate debate, for sure. It's kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, I guess. But either way, the maybe anime, maybe not show has had many brushes with death, and yet it still keeps going on. The show survived the death of its creator and showrunner in 2015, and then it survived Roosterteeth's acquisitions, mergers, and many controversies. It survived major production shifts in 2020, and it even survived the shuttering of Roosterteeth by Warner Brothers in 2024. When the company went down, rumors of multiple interested parties bidding for the show popped up, and anime distributor Viz Media bought the rights to the show not even a year after. And while Roosterteeth seems to be coming back in some capacity now, since it's been sold back to its original owner, RWBY is no longer a part of the Roosterteeth umbrella. It's been sold off, seemingly freed from all the controversy of its parent company. Great. It really does seem like the show is ironclad. I mean, it even survived and thrived following a hit piece from H-Bomber Guy. That's not an easy feat. And now, after all that it has gone through, RWBY looks like it's gonna keep going. Just recently, RWBY was re-released for purchase by Viz Media, with all 9 volumes of the show available to be bought both digitally and physically. And now, it was just announced that RWBY is returning to streaming on July 1st. But why? Well, because there's money to be made, of course. RWBY, up until this moment, seemed like it was successful in spite of its attachment to Roosterteeth, not because of it. While a chunk of Roosterteeth personalities were involved with the show, particularly through voicing characters, the show and the company generally had different fan bases. They overlapped a little bit, obviously. We all loved Rage Quit and Achievement Hunter and the streamers that then left that company and made and did their own thing. That's certainly where all of my childhood memories go. But someone could easily be a RWBY fan without being a modern Roosterteeth fan, and vice versa. But as time went on, Roosterteeth slowly became the RWBY company. Their flagship show, Red vs. Blue, came to an end as viewership died down. Their various gaming shows, for example Achievement Hunter, also shut down. They became less relevant over time as other content creators available on YouTube without a paywall took their place. And of course, there were many controversies within the company. And yet, RWBY marched on, mostly unaffected by all of it. It was stable and it was profitable, though in the later seasons, it was also expensive and time-consuming to make. But now, with the support of Viz Media, it looks like the show is staged to make a triumphant return. All of their social medias are active, it's available for purchase physically and digitally, the soundtrack is back on up, and all of these things are a good sign. And come July, the show is back on streaming, now on Hulu. Apparently. It was kind of announced on June 18th, then got backtracked on, but only kinda? Probably waiting for a convention to reveal it. But if they do go through with it, I guess it means they made the leap over from Warner Brothers to Disney, following the Animaniacs I see. RWBY started out on YouTube, then found a home on Netflix, then made its way over to Roosterteeth's own streaming service, and then landed landed on Crunchyroll, and it was delisted from each of these services a little while after, for some reason or another, left in limbo and literally unavailable online. But now it's all coming back together again on Hulu. Probably. And of course, on top of all this, it looks like the show is carrying on with new content soon. Probably new episodes, but nothing concrete has actually been announced yet. But Viz has announced its goal to expand the series' audience. And on top of that, they put out a content survey asking about what kind of media their audience would be interested in. And on top of all of this too, showrunner Kerry Shawcross has directly stated that the company wants to make sure we continue the story. So it's probably another season, but who can say for sure? But maybe it's something lame, like a 2-issue comic spin-off to finish the show. I don't know. You can never really know for certain with these sorts of things until an announcement is officially made, but with the show coming back to streaming, fans seem to be pretty hopeful. So whether you love RWBY or you hate it, or not really even gotten into it, it seems like we're gonna be seeing more of it in the near future, which seems in line with the messaging of the series anyway. After all, in the words of late showrunner Monty Ohm, the goal isn't to live forever, it's to make something that does. And I suppose that goal is pretty admirable. Let's just hope the production is less mid in controversy now that Roosterteeth and Warner Brothers are no longer involved. Whew, I want to say dodged a bullet, but they were very much in the middle of that firing range the whole time. But hey, it got this far, and thank goodness. I'm not sure the show could survive being cancelled again. For now though, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts on RWBY. We've never really covered it on the channel before. I'd love to get some thoughts, whether people are experienced with it, if they're super fans, if you don't care. It's 3D and it's indie. It's just 15-ish years old. So it sort of dodged me up to this point. Anyway, I'd love to hear all your thoughts and more, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio!